Thanks for joining me for Work with Human Nature, Not Against It, 3 ways to use psychology to inspire volunteers. In this video, I'll share 3 ways you can use brain science to strategically engage and sustain volunteer participation at your organization. I'm Tobi Johnson, President of Tobi Johnson & Associates and founder of Volunteer Pro, an online training and networking community for leaders of volunteers. I'm beaming direct from East Tennessee to the UK, and I'm excited to share some ideas with you. In the past few decades, science has progressed by leaps and bounds in its understanding of human behavior. New discoveries are disrupting business as usual and creating new opportunities to connect, collaborate, and mobilize volunteers for the greater good. Since the advent of brain imaging technology, neuroscientists can now better understand what triggers specific human behaviors. This science of influence is of particular interest to people like you, who are called upon to inspire, motivate, and capture the imagination of your community. The ability to move others to action is a foundational leadership skill for volunteer managers. By better understanding what triggers human actions, you can become better influencers and ultimately better leaders of volunteers. So let's get started. Social proof may be one of the most powerful ways to move others to act. Psychologist Albert Bandura studied the amazing effects of social proof on small children who are afraid of dogs. In one study, they were asked to watch a little boy happily playing with his canine buddy. The good news is that after only 4 days of observing their peers, 67% were willing to climb in a pen and play with the dog, even after everyone else had left the room. Even after a month, they remain unafraid and were more willing than ever to interact with their newfound pals. What's more, a film clip had the same effect and was even more successful when a variety of other children were shown playing with dogs. So the more some children played with dogs, the more others were willing to fall into line with what they saw others doing. This study illustrates a powerful human need to belong and fit in. We are incredibly sensitive to our social context and are highly motivated to remain in good standing with our peer group so that we can avoid social exclusion. So let's talk about 3 ways you can take advantage of this phenomenon. First, use volunteer testimonials in your volunteer recruitment appeals. The more volunteers feel that the people giving testimonials are like them, the more they will be inspired to act. Second, share ratings and comments from volunteers and people who benefit from your nonprofit's work on your website. They don't have to be perfect, they just need to be authentic. Third, give evidence of social proof with pictures of volunteers in action. A picture is truly worth 1,000 words, and your photos can convey a myriad of pro-volunteer social cues. Another powerful human behavior is what's called in-group favoritism. In short, we are more likely to be persuaded by people we consider part of our so-called tribe. So much so that when we merely look at faces of people in our insider group, there is greater neural activity in the brain. But don't worry, even if we don't know someone personally, we can be persuaded by them if we think they are similar to us in some way. Psychologist Robert Cialdini and his colleagues tested this theory with 3 messages to encourage hotel guests to reuse their towels. They used 3 messages in different hotel rooms. Guess which had the greatest impact on environmentally friendly behavior? Help save the environment? Join fellow guests, and by the way, 75% have helped. Or join fellow guests, and by the way, 75% of people who stayed in your room helped. In the end, 37% complied with the simple request. 44% complied when they knew others were helping, and nearly half complied when they knew those who stayed in their own room helped. Although they were strangers, others who stayed in their room were similar enough to be considered part of the in-group. Wondering how to use this psychological phenomenon to your advantage? Try these 3 tactics. First, use icebreakers to help volunteers recognize the things they have in common. Research shows the more rare the similarities, the stronger the bond. Second, create a sense of team unity by using words like we and us versus more divisive words like they and them. Third, reinforce a sense of identity in volunteers through the use of name tags, t-shirts, and the like to create a visual signifier that volunteers are part of the same club. Consistency is a third powerful driver of human behavior. We experience what's called cognitive dissonance when we perceive that our actions don't reflect our inner beliefs and values. This is so psychically uncomfortable for us that we take steps to resolve the inconsistency almost immediately. A study by psychologist Stephen Sherman illustrates this point. In it, local residents were surveyed by phone and asked a series of questions about supporting the American Cancer Society, including whether or not they would be likely to volunteer to fundraise door to door. Of course, no one wanted to seem uncharitable, so they said yes. A few days later, a representative from the American Cancer Society called with a genuine request to volunteer, and the organization realized a 700% increase in their volunteer corps. So what are ways you can use consistency to influence others? Try these. Try making small asks first, like joining the mailing list or volunteering for a one-time event. Then cultivate deeper commitment from there. Second, place pro-volunteering messaging around your office. If existing volunteers feel proud of their work, they'll be more likely to support you when you ask for help in order to keep consistent with their view of themselves as good citizens. Finally, set up regular routines that volunteers complete at training, meetings, and during shifts that are kept consistent each time, making these habits hard to break. Remember, by following a few of these tips, you can work with human nature, not against it. Try showcasing social proof in peer-to-peer volunteer recruitment. Encourage teamwork, not exclusivity, and start volunteers where they're at and then cultivate commitment over time. Researchers have also discovered that the heart decides and the intellect justifies. So you can also light up the brain by using emotional content and finally making the case for support by backing up your appeal with some rational data. One last thing, have patience. Building your skills as an influencer takes time. Choose one thing to try and work from there. In the words of the late tennis great Arthur Ashe, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can.